The disappearance of Pauline Picard, a chilling mystery from rural France. In the small, peaceful village of Goas-al-Loudou, nestled deep in Brittany, France, the Picard family led a quiet life on their farm. It was the spring of 1922, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers and fresh crops. The people of the village knew each other well, and there was a certain trust and calm that came with rural life. But all of that was about to change. The day Pauline vanished. On a cool April afternoon, Pauline Picard, a lively 2-year-old girl with chubby cheeks and bright eyes, was playing outside near her family's farmhouse. Her parents, Honoré and Jean Picard, watched from a distance as Pauline ran around, laughing and enjoying the freedom of the countryside. Like any parent, they couldn't keep their eyes on her every second, trusting that their farm was a safe place. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. When they looked again, Pauline was gone. At first, they assumed she had wandered off nearby, as curious children often do. But as the minutes turned to hours and there was no sign of her, the dread set in. A frantic search ensued. Neighbors, friends, and local villagers all joined in, combing the fields, forests, and streams for any trace of Pauline. As night fell, hope began to fade. For the Picard family, it was every parent's worst nightmare. Their little girl had simply vanished without a trace. The search for Pauline. For days, the villagers searched tirelessly. They scoured the farmlands, knocked on every door, and questioned travelers passing through. But there were no clues, no sightings, and no evidence to suggest where Pauline might have gone. The story spread beyond the village, reaching towns and cities across Brittany. People speculated about what could have happened. Could she have fallen into a river and been swept away? Was it possible she had been taken by someone passing through the village? Weeks passed, and the Picard family was on the verge of giving up hope. The possibility that their daughter might never return was becoming more real with each passing day. The mysterious child in Cherbourg. Just when the story seemed to have reached a dead end, an unexpected development occurred. About a month after Pauline disappeared, news arrived from Cherbourg, a bustling coastal city over 300 kilometers away from the Picard's farm. A young girl had been found wandering the streets alone, confused and eerily silent. She was about Pauline's age with the same features and appearance. The local authorities in Cherbourg contacted the Picard family, believing they had found their missing daughter. Overcome with hope, Honoré Picard traveled to Cherbourg to see if this child was indeed his missing daughter. The little girl didn't speak, but she looked like Pauline. Her silence was attributed to the trauma of being lost for so long. When Honoré saw the girl, he was struck by the resemblance. Though something about her demeanor felt different, he convinced himself it must be Pauline. He brought her back to the village, where Jean and the rest of the villagers gathered to welcome her home. A village divided. Back in Goas-al-Loudou, the Picard family tried to pick up the pieces and resume their lives with their found daughter. The villagers celebrated what seemed like a miracle. A child, thought lost forever, had returned. But there were whispers among the locals. While many accepted that the girl was Pauline, others couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The little girl didn't seem to recognize her home or her family, and she behaved differently than Pauline had before she disappeared. The laughter and curiosity that had defined Pauline's personality were gone, replaced by a cold silence. Still, the parents clung to the belief that this was their daughter. The trauma of being lost could explain the differences in her behavior, they told themselves. But some villagers remained skeptical, and their quiet doubts began to spread. The grisly discovery. Just as the Picards began to adjust to their new reality, a horrifying discovery shattered any sense of peace they had regained. A few weeks after the girl's return, a neighbor was out for a routine walk in the nearby fields when he stumbled upon a gruesome scene. Hidden in the tall grass near the edge of the forest lay the badly decomposed body of a small child. The child's clothes were tattered and dirty, but enough remained to identify them as the same ones Pauline had been wearing on the day she disappeared. Even more chilling was what lay beside the body, a severed skull of an adult man, stripped clean of flesh. The discovery sent shockwaves through the village. The police were called in, and the area was sealed off. The condition of the child's body suggested that it had been lying there for weeks, possibly since Pauline's disappearance. Who was the child in the field? The realization dawned slowly but painfully: if this decomposed body was Pauline, then who was the little girl they had taken in? Was she truly their daughter, or had they mistakenly brought home another child? And even more terrifying, who was the man whose skull was found beside her? The questions mounted as the investigation deepened, but answers were few and far between. The child's body was too decayed for a conclusive identification, and forensic technology at the time was limited. There were no fingerprints, no DNA tests, and no clear leads. The only thing the police could determine was that the body was that of a small child, around the same age as Pauline. A village in fear. The discovery of the adult skull next to the child's body created an atmosphere of fear and suspicion in the village. Had someone abducted Pauline, killed her, and left her body in the field as a cruel taunt? Was the skull that of her abductor? And if so, what had happened to him? Some villagers began to speculate that the murderer had been killed and left beside his victim, while others feared there was a far more sinister explanation. There were whispers of a strange man seen lurking around the village just before Pauline disappeared, though no one could remember exactly what he looked like. Some believed the man had taken Pauline and met his end after committing the crime. Others felt the discovery was a gruesome coincidence. The girl who wasn't Pauline. Meanwhile, the girl the Picards had taken in was now at the center of a growing mystery. After it was determined that the body in the field might be Pauline, the authorities questioned the identity of the girl from Cherbourg. She didn't seem to know where she had come from, and no one in Cherbourg had reported a child missing. Ultimately, the family was forced to accept that the child they had brought home was not their daughter. Heartbroken, they sent her to an orphanage, her true identity never uncovered. Whether she had been lost, abandoned, or a victim of her own tragedy, the mystery of her life remains unsolved to this day. An unsolved case. The case of Pauline Picard was never officially solved. The villagers were left with more questions than answers. Who had taken Pauline? Was the skull truly connected to her death, or was it a gruesome coincidence? And what happened to the man, if there had been one, who may have been involved in her disappearance? As time passed, the case faded from memory, becoming one of France's many unsolved mysteries. The fields where Pauline's body was found grew over, and the Picard family quietly moved on, haunted by the loss of their daughter and the eerie events that followed. Even now, over a century later, the story of Pauline Picard lingers in the air of Goas Al Ludu, a chilling reminder of how easily a life can vanish and how some questions are never meant to be answered.